example 2, we are given a graph and we are going to use that graph to answer a bunch of questions. So you can see the graph right here. The directions say to use the given graph of the function f to answer parts A through G. So the questions continue on this page and then throughout the next page. Okay. All right. So just a word of warning, these questions are kind of random. All right, let's get started in part A. It says, find each of the following: f of 0, f of -6, f of 6, and f of 12. All right, so basically what this is, okay, we do not have a formula for this graph, okay? We don't have the equation. All we have to rely on is the picture itself. So let's think about how this would work if we did have a formula. So I think back when we started looking at functions, I gave you the function f of x is equal to 2x minus 5. So we know the first thing that we're asked to find here is f of 0. So remember what that means. If you have an equation, whatever's in parentheses is your x value. So this would mean go to the formula. Everywhere you see an x, you're going to replace it with 0. So this would be 2 times 0 minus 5, and the answer would be -5. Okay, so looking back on how to do this using an equation, basically what this means is if you see f of 0, this means, so f of 0 means to find the output, which is the y value, when x equals 0. Okay, again, whatever is in parentheses, that's the x value you're looking at. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, scroll down here. If we scroll down, we have some blanks so we can fill this out. Okay, so if we go to if we look at f of 0, okay, again, that means that x equals 0. Okay, so we're going to go to the x-axis and we're going to locate 0. Okay, if you see where my cursor is, this is where x equals 0 on the x-axis. Okay, but we have to find the corresponding point on the graph. Okay, so if we go up to the graph, here is the point that we're talking about. Okay, so 0, 3 is the point on this graph where x equals 0. Okay, so the question is, what do you write down for the answer? Okay, again, turn your attention back to this red statement I wrote down. F of 0 means to find the output, the y value, when x equals 0. Okay, so according to this, if you look at this point, the coordinates are 0, 3. They're spelled out for you. Okay, if the x value is 0, that means the y value is 3. Okay, so the answer here is 3. Okay, now something I want to make a point of, okay, it is actually incorrect to write the ordered pair. Okay, if you told me that f of 0 is 0, 3, and let me write this down. If you said f of 0 is 0, 3, this is incorrect. Okay, so I'm going to write it down and I'm going to scratch it out. Okay, this means, okay, again, this means to state the y value when x equals 0. Okay, only the y value should be given, not the ordered pair. Okay, so that's how all of these are going to work in part A. Okay, so if we move on to the next one, now we need to find f of -6. Okay, so whatever's inside the parentheses, that's what your x value is going to be. Okay, so here x is equal to -6. Okay, so you need to go to the x-axis and you need to locate -6. Okay, so on the x-axis, here's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Here would be -6 right here. Okay, but you've got to go down to the graph. You've got to find the corresponding point on the graph. Okay, and that's going to be right here. Okay, so basically this point is telling you if x is -6, the y value is -3. Okay, so remember, what does f of -6 mean? Okay, this means to state the y value when x equals -6. Okay, well, according to this green point, okay, if the x coordinate, or if the x value is -6, the corresponding y value on the graph is -3. Okay, so the answer here is going to be strictly -3. Okay, again, do not give me the ordered pair -6, -3. Okay, all right, so these other two that we have remaining in part A should be done similarly. Okay, so if we move on and we're taking a look at f of 6, okay, so now we're looking at an x value of +6. Okay, so let's go to the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, here's where x equals 6, and actually the point that corresponds, the corresponding point on the graph is right here on the x-axis. That point has coordinates 6, 0. Okay, so basically, again, we're going to be looking at this point. Okay, and we know from this that if x is equal to 6, the y value is equal to 0. Okay, so the answer here, f of 6, is going to equal 0. Okay, all right, last one. Okay, let's take a look at f of 12. Okay, so here the x value that we're going to be plugging in is going to be 12. All right, so x is going to be 12. So we need to go to the x-axis and locate 12. Okay, so if we read this carefully, this right here, if you look where my cursor is, this is where x equals 10. Here's where x equals 11. And then 12 isn't shown, but we know that x equals 12 would be right here. And if you look, if you go up and down, you never hit the graph. Okay, the graph actually stops when x equals 11. Okay, the graph does not continue on to where x equals 12. So again, if you look above and below, like along this vertical blue line that I've drawn through x equals 12, it never intersects your graph. There's no graph there. Okay, so what happens here is there's no output. Okay, if x equals 12, there's no graph there, there's no output. So we're just going to write undefined. Okay, so we're going to write, you can write that. Again, that just means there's no output when x equals 12. Okay, and that is it. Okay, again, if you see any of this, okay, f of some number, that number that's inside parentheses is your x value. You need to find the corresponding point on the graph for that particular x value, and the answer will be the y value only, not the ordered pair.